on her way, so CB4 is on her way.
Hold down too.
You're just covering it for everyone. Got it. CB5.
Yeah.
CB6.
Here.
CB7.
Here, online.
Thank you, Beverly. CB8.
Right here.
CB9. See online. CB10. CB11. I see Xavier on. I think that he may be commuting right now, so we'll get back to Xavier.
See, here, present.
Thank you. And CB12. Hey. All right, everyone. Can I have a motion to adopt today's agenda?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you. Going to the borough president and the deputy borough president are unavailable this morning, so I will be giving the borough president's report. I will try to keep it brief. It's August, so trying to get you out of here as soon as possible. So just on a staffing point, wanted to make sure folks knew, and thank you to those who reached out, and if you didn't, it's fine. Just want to let everyone know that the borough president very kindly has named me the director officially, so appreciate it. Thank you. So, happy to have the acting removed from my title, and I wanted to thank everyone who's been patient with me over the last few months and for your kind words and support as we've gone through board appointments and resolutions. It's been a whirlwind 4 or 5 months now, so just thank you all for that. Speaking of community board appointments, I am looking to fill as many vacancies as possible between now and when boards come back for business in a few weeks. So, our CAU team, which by the way, I should also thank for all their support to get to this place. Our team has been checking on lists and checking vacancies. We're reaching out to council members as well to staff some of those vacancies. So hopefully we'll have some progress there before everything is started in September. And then just finally, but I think one of the bigger things for the borough president right now is on the policy front. You may have seen, we have been focusing on the issue of ghost cars. You've probably seen them out on the street. It's either a bent license plate, a defaced license plate, paper plates, like just printed plates. And the borough president has highlighted these like James Bond style like things that will even like put a screen over the license plate when you're crossing, a toll or going by a camera. So the report notes that, all these forms of ghost cars have probably led to hundreds of millions of dollars in unclaimed tolls and fines. And I think the part that is really distressing is the fact that, if you're not able to connect the car to a plate when they're speeding through a school zone or something like that, then they're kind of going through without impunity. So we're looking to crack down on that. I think I would recommend it's on the borough president's website if you want to take a look at like the multi-page report, but just highlighting a couple of recommendations that we've made, calling on the state to issue like RFID tags or RFID registration stickers, so that when the car goes through a toll, like it's already connecting the plate, the registration, and the car all in one tidy place. We're calling on getting the NYPD traffic enforcement more training. We're hoping that, AI tools can be used because you have a lot of plates that are either defaced or covered in one place and not another. So you have the like the state tolling like has like hundreds of images of like partial plates. And if you could just put them together, probably be able to get it working. And then increasing fines and penalties for those who have these type of plates. And then we've also been reaching out now to all of the online marketplaces, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, etc., Craigslist, like to crack down on the sale on this. So, there's more to it in the policy. I would suggest taking a look at it, but just wanted to share that report. Any questions before we go into our presentation? I see Andrea joined us from CA3. Hi. Cool. So with that, I think next on our agenda, we will go into a presentation from CB6.
Great, that's perfect. You'll need to come up there.
Yeah, or I can flip through the slides if
Yeah,
you
is
want
that
to.
okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just share it. with everyone who's virtual. All right, everybody should see that screen. So whenever you're ready, yeah.
I'm gonna let Michelle. Take the lead.
Hi, thank you for having me join today. My name is Majid. I am the land use chair at CB6. I want to share with you this quick study we did at CB6 about the future of the FDR. Next slide. This really, it started from a conversation about how can we have a better experience at our waterfront, safe, accessible, and resilient FDR in CB6, and we understand it's way beyond just our district. Hence why we're having conversations with others. Next slide. This was a quick study, does not involve public engagement, but rather just bringing some experts into a room, trying to discuss with key stakeholders from our committee board. Now we're doing the elected officials briefings, and we hope that next phase would be getting some more funding, advancing this, be not just a CB6 thing, but rather Manhattan-wide. Slide. So a quick acknowledgement. CB6 brought two firms to help do this work. WXY, which just for transparency, I work for WXY as well on the site thing, and Borough, an engineering firm. Those two firms helped bring all these experts on the right, a lot from our community board, but also folks from transportation alternatives, urban design forum, even RPA, folks who brought us the FDR 100 years ago. We had the Associate Dean of NYU and others, really just to discuss at a high level what can be done with the FDR. Next slide. So again, while just looking at this presentation is going to look at this segment, we understand the repercussions and the implications of any changes to the FDR impact regional level, city level, and regional level. Next slide. And the point of having this and presenting to folks, which we did present publicly to in our community board, is to say the issues you have at the block level, whether noise pollution, air pollution, issues of safety, resiliency, and all that, we can't just fix at the block level. This relates all the way up to the region. So conversations where folks say, oh, why don't you fix, like the crumbling 37th Street underpass, or the fact that the FDR floods every season at this point, or we have Hurricane Sandy and others. We're like, yeah, this is not just something community boards can do by themselves without creating a much larger coalition. Next slide. And so the four priorities, really basics that I don't think a lot of folks disagree with: environmental resiliency, waterfront access, safe multimodal infrastructure, and community amenities, understanding that for us, CB6 is one of the most starved districts in terms of public amenity space. Next slide. So we, in the report, and you can keep going to the next slide here, we took a quick look at the history. I won't go through one by one, but we put together this report, 50, 60 pages, that a little bit walks folks through how we arrived to how the FDR is today. Originally, the FDR, again, almost 100 years ago, was envisioned to be a tree-lined boulevard. People just cross back and forth. It was like referencing the boulevard in London, and it's now anything but. Over the years, fewer crossings were there, just removed one by one. And then overpasses, underpasses. So we arrived at the limited access parkway we have today, which means no pedestrians are on the FDR at any point. And the very last image you see is what the Borough president had put actually proposal, popular. There are like different views on it, popular or not popular. But the view was you don't need this overpass urban highway in 2024 or 2050 is what we're looking at here. But rather you can bring it down certain stages and just fix it up, not an overhead highway. Next slide. So in the report, there are gems like these, photos from back when it was called the East River Drive. And as you can see, look, you see, they're median in the middle. It was supposed to be for people, it was supposed to be permeable for folks to access their waterfront. It was never meant to be a solid wall that segregates the neighborhoods from the river. Next slide. So this was just taking stock of what we currently have in the district. We can certainly report after if you want to look through it. Next slide. We looked at two key issues. When folks say, why are you even talking about this? We say mobility and road safety issues. The FDR carries as many people as the BQE, which is insane because the FDR is an unbuilt highway, means there's no trucks on it, there are no buses on it, and the BQE carries 10% of the national economy. So in comparison, the FDR is a huge problem that we have to solve. At the same time, environmental resiliency. Everybody remembers this picture from 2012. if a storm hits, this is gonna impact not only local economy, but also access for emergency. This is a really big issue, and to get ahead of it is, the wise thing to do, we think. Next slide. So with that all in mind, we start to say, all right, what can we even talk about now that everybody shares a foundation that the current conditions of the art is not where it should be. Next slide. And before we jump to blue sky visioning, we just again took stock of what have others thought about. And there's so many projects, either recently complete, Greenway, obviously there's still segments in the works, South Avenue, South Street, and others. There's a lot that's planned, and there's a lot that's just studies that didn't go anywhere or have not really been linked together. Esker being a massive one that's currently underway, and we definitely hope that okay, we can build on top of that. Those don't have to be disjointed approaches. Next slide. So we established some key principles saying 3 lenses: neighborhood and waterfront development, multimodal mobility and transportation, and environmental resiliency. And we thought, how can we address these 3 key lenses that the experts who were in that design session that helped bring this work helped identify? Let's just package everything in these 3 categories and move forward as such. The principles on the right are basics that were established, like restitching the FDR into the city network. So we're not just moving traffic out of the FDR onto our streets, which is not the goal by any means. Reducing reliance on the FDR, using more of our waterfront. Again, creating multimodal connectivity on the FDR, so it's not just cars, but rather increasing capacity by using different modes. Next slide. And so what we came up with, for now, 3 key design opportunities. An overbuild, which means parks over the FDR in areas where the topography allows us. We already have plenty of those, I'll show in a second. A boulevardization, think not necessarily west side, but that's just an example of having at grade that people cross. And lastly, under the FDR activation. This is the most immediate, lowest cost intervention that we can have to make a dent into the existing condition. Slide. So what we did, again, understanding this is a very high level, early stages study, is look at what segments could have, for example, an overbuild, and acknowledge that we already have overbuilds over the FDR. UN is one, CDA has one, obviously, with a big park, and therefore, where else can this be utilized? Well, we pulled this one example from San Luis, not because we like that example, but it was relevant to show that it's something that's done often. The next example is boulevardization. Again, there are different segments that the FDR is already at grade. Looking at, for example, this at 25th, where we have a pedestrian overpass, not accessible, and it's going to cost us a lot of money the next few years to replace. Having an at-grade crossing is not as simple as I make it sound, but that's one way you can start to restitch the waterfront to the city. And West Side Highway is now West Street being an example locally. And next slide. And activation. This is something the city already does. Again, South Street segment. The case study we pulled is from Toronto, the Bentway, which they've done great work under crumbling highway. Doesn't cost, I mean, it costs a lot of money in that case, but it's not supposed to cost so much money to just activate it, to say, instead of just doing parking or fencing it off and saying no one access here, you can do back of house uses, last mile deliveries, get some of those trucks off of our street under the FDR, have it be functional and serving the community as opposed to just vacant space that's sitting there. Slide. And so this is where we arrived at this study. The goal for us now is to take the next step of identifying first traffic implication. We have not done any, this is not a technical study, so there isn't any engineering analysis that was done. But before we get to that, we understand the state is already doing analysis for the west side, and we think the east side should get a bit of attention as well, mainly focusing on its vulnerability and its importance to the regional network and to the local economy. And we hope that other committee boards share this passion about how important of an issue this is, so we can again start building a coalition, get our elected officials on board, and just see, is there anything we can do with the FDR that is more ambitious and more useful for our community than most. Next slide. Right, and these are the next steps we're currently thinking about. So I don't know, Sandy, if you want to add anything.
I mean, this study started when I was chair, so it started, these things take time, and we understand that, but I think this study is a great first step, and so we really are looking for support. We're also looking for funding opportunities, but we understand that to get the funding, we probably need the support first to show that we're working citywide and doing something excellent. And we're happy to come to other boards to present. And I think we've been talking to CB8, CB3, CB11. It's more of an east side, but traffic is traffic and all that. So. Great. Any questions?
It's a great presentation. Yeah. Thank you. I will tell you, our ability to reactivate connection to the waterfront on the west side and having connections directly from pedestrians to the park has not only made the park, the Hudson River Park, what it is, but it has changed the whole look and use of the west side.
We constantly hear, why doesn't the east side have the same amenities as the west side? Are we not advocating enough? And I mean, it's completely different, east and west, the conditions, so it is hard to explain sometimes.
Just to build on that and being CB4, that has been a very significant focus of ours. Our former chair, Jeffrey Francois, was a significant advocate for, we used like the term knitting together and really bridging what often feels like a community and then a park and with a highway through it, and how do we find permeability in that space? And I think certainly with the redesign of Pier 76 and others, we're hopeful that that will happen and create natural opportunities for that. But your comment about traffic is traffic and will impact everyone. I'm sure our transportation committee would love to, be ahead of this. Christine Boutte, as our chair, is very active with local and citywide issues. So I'm sure we welcome you guys. And also just kudos, it's clearly very well done presentation.
Yeah, I was gonna add, I think it's funny because I was driving through and I started thinking about, especially in CB12, where it's a beautiful parkway, right? And it reminds me a little bit of Chicago. And thinking about like its usage, but I'm also curious. I mean, I know right now we're focused on like moving through Manhattan, but it's interesting if I see the development of the South Bronx and what they're like. I'm not a big driver, y'all, so I don't know if it's a driveway or parkway or what, but the driving part. And just like the aesthetics and the access to the water and a lot of the projects that are happening on the other side of the river. I'd be kind of curious to see what's happening there too, right? Are there opportunities where maybe they're a little bit more advanced in their thinking there, or are they kind of replicating many of the same issues that we see? But that's just something I've like, especially when you get in CB12 and you're able to see kind of like how traffic flows through the South Bronx is really interesting. But definitely we'd love to have you guys come to our committee, because also like at the end of the FDR, there's new projects taking place that will be access to the waterfront. So I think thinking about like how we stitch the borough from point to point would be nice to see.
I'll say just a few quick things. Obviously, I'm very receptive to this idea of the plan. It's a great presentation, and you guys did great work at this. I think I mentioned this to Sandy, but just for the record or for the deliberation, I think that the Chinatown Connections plan is underway, right? I think there probably might be some kind of obviously there's going to be a lot of technicalities that are going to arise that will affect something like this. But I just know that's going to be something that's going to be tricky for the CBP and the CBC to try and juggle a little bit. Yeah. But just to be aware.
I'll say we've been attending other meetings, just listening in the background. We saw DOT's presentation to CB3 and how, again, for that segment within CB3, they're like, we looked at putting the FDR under ground or burying it or just making it into a boulevard. And we realized from the get-go, just one slide that says, realized that's an effort way larger than CBA three. So we dismissed it and let's talk about overpasses and other. And they moved on with their presentation. It makes sense.
Yeah.
That was not their scope. And obviously it's like requires extensive studies. But yeah, if we do that, then every one of our districts is gonna have the same response from DOT, and it's not their fault, it's just, this is a larger effort, so either
Right.
we tackle it collectively, or we're gonna have the same solutions, which are quite expensive.
Well, just want to say thank you for the presentation, really appreciate it. And if it's okay with you, if I can share the slide deck out with the folks here.
Absolutely.
Okay,
It's on our website as well.
awesome, thank you.
This is the like the summarized version, and we can share the full report up here, please.
Great, thank you. All right, I think with that, we'll move on to our next presentation, which is from Parks.
I don't know, Trisha, you want to say a few words before we start with the deck?
Yeah, hello from the sick house on the Upper East Side. Hi everybody. You all know me pretty well, so you know that it is taken like an act of God, i.e. a very disgusting virus for my children to keep me from going to Borough board this morning, and I'm so sorry, but it just wasn't in the cards, and I apologize profusely. I really wish I could be there with you guys, and I have so much to say to each one of you in terms of updates and park stuff, but suffice to say that come the fall, I'm be happy to come back. And really today, the bulk of the presentation, it has been led and shaped by the wonderful woman who you see at your table, Jen Hoppe, who's going to lead the presentation. Let me just say a couple things though about this, and it's nice to see you guys and to, again, although blurry and somewhat far away, but lovely to see you nonetheless. So this is today talking all about Vital Parks, which is our Commissioner Sue Donahue's kind of core initiative, being led by Jen Hoppe, but being championed by all of us throughout the agency. I want to say that for me, it comes down into two pieces, which Jen is going to go into more detail. One, it's really looking at the billions of dollars that are going into our parks already and understanding how that's going to meet our goals of resiliency and health and equity. Jen will go into all of it there. But the second piece of it, which I really hope that you all pay attention to, because I do think that it's going to ultimately impact, I hope it impacts how you think about your budget resolutions and how you think about those statement of needs stocks that I know only a few people read, but I am one of them, is that it's really a tool and putting more information into your hands so that you can make better assessments of not just your block or one park, but we base it off of your community board. So this is really community board based. So you can actually look comparatively at different community boards, community districts, look at the needs, look at what's missing, look at where additional investment has been going, but maybe where it hasn't. And so hopefully when you're, and I'm guilty of this too. I come from Community Board 8 where Valerie and others know that I'd happily go to every budget meeting talking about the Esplanade. But did I really know how much money was going into every other park of mine? And maybe I should be not just saying the Esplanade. I'll always fight for the Esplanade, but maybe I should also be talking about St. Catherine's. Well, not now because now St. Catherine's is getting a lot of money, but you know that you get my
Never
my
enough.
you get my point. So hopefully you'll get a lot out of our presentation today. There's more to come on this. We're really going on a bit of a roadshow here, trying to teach as many people as possible about this data tool that we have coming out, really talking to them about this investment that we already have in our parks. I'm gonna stick around. I'll just be off camera sipping my tea and essentially just sitting here, but thank you again I've been able to work with all of you throughout the first few months. I miss you terribly, but the job is good and I'm really happy to continue to work with you guys. So with that, I'll pass it off to JC and Jen, and my thanks again for them being in person.
Thanks, Trisha.
Great, thank you so much, Trisha. And thank you all for coming this morning. As Trisha mentioned, I'm Jen Hoppe. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer for NYC Parks. This is JC Peoples, also from the Commissioner's Office. We're gonna walk you through a quick deck on Vital Parks for All, investing in New York City's living infrastructure. It's our framework guiding our work over the next several years. Next. One thing we felt was really important to encapsulate as we developed this plan was the narrative about parks. I'm sure you all know too often people take them for granted, yet for particular communities, maybe for all communities, they're really extensions of our living spaces. There are front yards, there are backyards, there are places for our mental health, are interacting with people from different backgrounds. They're the great democratizers, and they really are critical to making New York City livable. In addition to the health benefits that they provide and the social cohesion that they foster, they're invaluable in our efforts to combat climate change. So they're critical. They're not just extra, and hence we have living infrastructure in the title of our framework. Because just as we invest in our roadways and in our sewers, we really need to invest in our parks, particularly now. This is just an overview of why parks are so essential. I think I covered all of this. Oh, obviously, CB5 and CB1 and CB3, you know, that and CB4 and 2, our parks are critical to our economy. They host lots of tours, they host events, they bring money into New York City. But more importantly, maybe for us, is that they're an oasis from the frenetic pace of New York. And we're saying parks are more important than ever. We're talking about more severe and sudden storms. We have a mental health crisis. We've got, unfortunately, increased polarization. We really need parks to bring people together. And as many of you know, and it's not just the FDR, much of our park infrastructure was constructed during the building boom of the 1950s, and in some cases, the WPA era. So it's aging. And I mentioned the epidemic of loneliness. We're finding more and more from the Surgeon General's reports and beyond that mental health obviously contributes to chronic disease and other health challenges. And sometimes I think loneliness was equated to smoking like 2 packs of cigarettes a day, something crazy in terms of its health impacts. So parks are more important than ever for helping the city meet these challenges. Next. So Vital Parks for All is our vision to equitably strengthen New Yorkers' health, environment, and communities through our park system. So as Tricia mentioned, we've come up with this initial plan. We've mapped out everything that we have, seeing where we are today. And we're happy to say that much of our capital investment, this $3.2 billion in initial investment, is going where it's needed most, in underserved communities and areas that need resiliency projects, in working class communities where people are more dependent on their playgrounds and athletic fields. And last, but probably not least, as Tricia mentioned, we built this data tool. We don't want to just keep it to ourselves. We want to empower New Yorkers with real information about what they have access to, how their community is served, and maybe where gaps remain. And we'll walk you through, JC and I will walk you through a demo of the tool a little later on in the presentation. But you'll be able to see how your community compares citywide. And so we're putting that in the hands of the community. So what makes a park system vital? We want every New Yorker to have access within their own community to parks that are clean and safe, green and resilient, and supported by engaged and empowered New Yorkers. So we compiled, we read community statements of need. We've compiled 21 elements that we feel contribute to a vital park system within a community. that fall under those value pillars of clean and safe, green and resilient, and supported by engaged, empowered New Yorkers. They're listed here. Under clean and safe parks, we have things like we want everyone to have access to a new or renovated park. We want people to have access to parks that have park enforcement patrol officers, helping people feel safe and deterring negative uses. We want people to have access to public restrooms, which I know is a big thing for Mark. Under green and resilient, we have things like greenways, tree canopy, fully stocked street trees, access to the waterfront. Sometimes that's a water body and maybe not the East River, community gardens, trails. And under empower and engage, we want everyone to have access to parks that have special events, enrichment programs, activities that activate the park and welcome people into them. And we want opportunities for people to be empowered through stewardship, to have a say in their park's present and their park's future. And oftentimes, to the full extent possible, we want every park to have a friends group, to have people who are championing them. So this was an internal tool we developed. It helped us to do the citywide analysis that Tricia mentioned of all of our communities across the city, those 21 vital parks elements. We were able to drill down to the community board level. We've got community board profiles that are downloadable that you can access, and JC has made packets for all of you. And with that, we've identified where are gaps, where do we need to prioritize our limited resources. Next. So this is just an illustration. We looked at things like public restrooms. Where do New Yorkers have access? Where do they not have access? Right now, I think it's about 70% of New Yorkers citywide have access to a public restroom in a park within a 10-minute walk. This map helps us see where we're out of range, where we might need to site new bathrooms or work with city DOT to have them put automatic pay toilets in those areas. So it's a helpful planning tool for us. Next. Another thing we looked at were enrichment centers. With global warming, our parks are being used more and for more and more months now, essentially year round, but indoor enrichment centers are equally important. So we looked at where do we have rec centers, where do we have nature centers, where do we have our historic houses? Only 34% of New Yorkers can get to one of those within a 15-minute transit ride. So we see where gaps are. And like I said, we didn't want to keep all that data to ourselves. We want to hand it over to all of you, your leaders in your community. People come to you for answers. We want to equip you with this tool and help you get the word out to more New Yorkers so they can see what they have, so they can celebrate that, but maybe also see what they don't have so that they can advocate for more resources for it. Trish mentioned we do community board profiles here. You can also actually go into your community and look block by block to see what you have. If a particular park has park enforcement patrol, if it has a partner group, if it's had a recent capital investment. So really enables you to do that deep dive on your community district. Next. And here's just a image, a clip from that of park bathrooms in this zoomed in area of a community. Next. This is just a snapshot of the type of profile that comes out. This is for Community Board 3. This is available on Parks website. It's shareable. You can send the link out to everybody on your community board distribution list so they can see it. And it shows you where you are now and how it compares to the citywide average for that vital park element. So you see park enforcement, Community Board 3, 95% of the population can get to a park within a 10-minute walk that has park enforcement patrol. And citywide, that average is only 48%. So in terms of park enforcement, you may think we're actually doing well, or you may say, well, that's great, but we still don't feel like it's enough. And here's why. So it's a springboard and it's a way to substantiate your funding requests and your advocacy efforts. Next. If you have constituents that you're collaborating with and serving that don't care about the big picture, you also can drill down to the park level. We have something that we've developed called My Park Vital Signs. It's for any New Yorker to go onto our website, zone in on their park. This is up in Community Board 12, the 186th Street basketball courts. Surprisingly, it has a good park condition score. And it will have a capital project. It doesn't have any trees, no MAP trees present at this site, so there's no shade. So that's definitely an issue. And then it talks about under empowered and engaged. Are there upcoming events? Or is there a volunteer group that's associated with it? And if you don't have those things, it directs you to resources to help you understand how do you get them. One thing that's new coming out of all of this, besides all this transparency and this data, is we've developed something called the Park Condition Score. We want New Yorkers, like when you go to a restaurant, you see the A, you see the B. We want New Yorkers to have a quick and easy way to understand, how is my park doing? So the Park Condition Score takes all of our inspection data, sort of drills down on things like litter, which is important, and structural condition. And you, through some type of algorithm or calculation, you land with a score, and it tells you, in short, how my park is doing. And we have parks that have high scores, and then we have parks that have really low scores. So your parks committees can look at that and drill down and see, wow, which parks are in need of capital investment, or maybe just in need of some repair or more maintenance staff, so they're cleaner. Next. I mentioned a $3.2 billion initial investment, that's huge, but as you know, Parks Department oversees 30,000 acres. That's roughly the equivalent in size and land area to the county of the Bronx. So we see that as just an initial investment. You all know which of your parks are getting capital funding, what you've been advocating maybe for several years that hasn't gotten funding. So we see this as an initial investment or a down payment, and we know more remains to be done. But the hope is that with this tool, you'll be able to see what you have, where the needs are, and you can focus your advocacy efforts on outstanding needs. And these are just some of the initiatives that are coming out. We're focusing on gun violence prevention communities, 6 precincts with high gun violence rates across the city, making upstream investments there and programmatic investments. Citywide, we're working on better bathrooms. I think we're doing maybe 29 in Manhattan. I think there are 15 new and 14 renovations that are funded and planned. And then we're doing $1 billion worth of upgrades to our aging pool infrastructure, everywhere from Highbridge Pool to Lower Manhattan. There are multiple sites here. Next, under our green and resilient value pillar, we're focusing on the most heat vulnerable communities for tree planting. We're doing targeted park acquisitions, doing things to improve ecology in our wetlands, and expanding the Greenway network citywide. And lastly, next, under our engaged and empowered value pillar, we're trying to mobilize more stewards, yes, to help us care for our parks, but also to help them connect to one another, to grow more civic engagement so people can celebrate and support one another and their communities. And then we're making a considerable capital investment. I think now it's grown to about $1 billion in our aging recreation centers, and adding 2 new ones we're actually adding 5, now 6 new ones in underserved communities. And lastly, we're trying to champion the work of our grassroots partners through the Citywide Parks Network, growing a coalition of our 1,000 grassroots groups, our alliances, and our conservancies, so synergies develop, and providing technical assistance and resources through the Green Fund. Next. So what's next? We're going to each of the borough boards in each of the 5 counties. We'll be holding, as Tricia mentioned, in-person forums for communities to come out, interface with the borough presidents and the Parks Commissioner, hear about vital parks, and also get time to propose questions, answers, talk about solutions. Next. Look at that Inwood Hill, one of my favorites. So these are just the takeaways. We want to empower you. We need your help in getting the word out about these tools. We can send you the social media kit about this. We can send you a 1-page handout, or I guess JC has them in packets for you. We want to get this tool out into the hands of all New Yorkers so people can see what they have, celebrate and support it, and advocate for what they still feel their unmet needs. So if we can toggle, is there a way that I can do it or
Yeah,
no?
absolutely.
Okay. I think I might need the laptop to do it.
Oh, the laptop is.
Is yours?
So,
It's
yeah.
not, it's not, okay.
Here we go.
So if we can go online,
Oh, sure.
nyc.gov,
Where you choosing?
Vital Parks.
Vital Parks.
That's the URL, by the way.
So
And any questions about this, or do you want me to just do the quick? It's a lot. Yes, community board 5.
Yes, thank you. Thank you also for this presentation. It's great. It's great to, I think some of these things we know from just the experience of living in these districts, but seeing the metrics of it are very helpful to kind of understand objectively what the numbers are and also sort of how they compare across the city. This is something we're very focused on CB5 because you can see where one of the light spots on your map. Is there a way in this tool to sort of compare more locally? I see you have a citywide, but is there a way to look at it like versus Manhattan, for example? Because like for public restrooms, it looks like we're sort of on par, but I think if you're looking at one of your maps, if you sort of looked at just Manhattan, we're falling behind in that area. So I think some of these metrics are maybe more helpful if they're or like the Forever Wild is probably not the best thing for a Manhattan board to be comparing itself to the city to a citywide.
Right. So we have done, you're saying like borough to borough?
Yeah, like if we could look at how we stack up against sort of other community boards broadly rather than the whole city.
Yes, you can. So let me, can I do it?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's do that. So to go into it, and you want to look at bathrooms. So we're in the Vital Parks Explorer. And we want to look at public restrooms. So you can see community board comparisons across the city. And community board 5, only 72% of the population can get to a Parks public restroom within 10 minutes. And so
Better than us.
It's only just, but if you look at that against citywide, you know, it looks like we're doing all right. But when you start to look a little more locally against Manhattan, we're sort of at the bottom of the.
yes, so the tool, you absolutely can compare community board to community board, and you can do it a deeper dive too, right? Because part of this is dictated by where people are. I don't know if people know the national Walk to Park campaign and the Trust for Public Land. We're modeling our analysis of all these 21 elements on that. We want, you know, nationally, they want everyone to be able to walk to a park within 10 minutes. So we took that model and sort of expanded it to all these elements. We want everyone to be able to walk to these elements within a 10-minute walk. But then when you go into the community board itself, all your public restrooms may be clustered, right?
Mhm.
So we can, let's go to community board 5 and do this is a big screen.
How are you defining that public restroom?
That was actually part of my next.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, keep going, but yeah.
So for right now, where we are in analysis, we're just including what the Parks Department runs, what's in our portfolio.
Okay.
The longer range goal is to add things like New York Public Library or TOPS or city DOTs, automatic pay toilets. Right now, this just encompasses ours, so things like Hudson River Park Trust aren't in there. Any non-New York City park space is not in there. National Park Service grants Tomb, Roberta, it's not Denny Farrell, it's Riverbank, sorry. It's kind of Jenny Farrell State Park. So if you go in to more closely, you can start to see these circles are where like public restrooms are. So where community board fives are, it looks like they're primarily in like where the parks are. But maybe up in the north, residents don't have access. So the tool can help you see, where the gaps are and to drill down more closely. And you can obviously go in like to block level.
It's great.
And see which particular parks they are. Well, something else that, were those your questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Things, and something else I wanted to show people were the parks with a high condition score. That's a new thing. That's like our version of the restaurants A, B, C, D. And you look at the communities, you look at borough wide and, Manhattan, with the exception of community board 8. Seems pretty well served by parks that have high condition scores. Obviously, that's not the whole story. When you drill down into your community board, you might see where are the problematic parks. For many of you, you're invested in your community, where the needs are, but maybe this will help. You'll have a map, you'll be able to share that and say, this is where we need more resources in particular. So if we go into community board 8, it seems like the northern half of the district doesn't have a park with a high condition score. So that's where.
Yeah, I mean, are you counting in the 39% any part of Central Park?
Yeah.
Because that would even make us lower, quite frankly.
You're asking it, their condition scores?
Well, I mean, how much of Central Park, if any, are you including in our public park space for our district?
I'd say some of the people on the perimeter in terms of access, but I think in terms of the park score, it isn't taken into account.
So let me ask you a related question. I don't think we would qualify as an underserved community in terms of the equity definition, but in terms of.
In terms of your open space ratio, you do.
We do.
Yeah.
Okay, so does that mean that some of that initial funding will be coming to us?
The initial funding is for things that we've received, it's not our entire capital budget. So it's for gun violence prevention areas, heat vulnerable areas. We have 136 million for street tree planting. You may be getting some of, you don't have a pool. Oh yeah, John Jay.
Yeah,
Yeah. Some of your pools,
well, we just got a
rec center.
refurbishment
That's
of
true.
that.
Yeah.
Sorry, on the question of improvements and how this will bring visibility to the issues. We were actually just met Jessica J from CB4, and we were just talking this week about, in some cases, parks which have significant capital needs and have been successful in raising some of the funds, but the Parks Department doesn't want to move forward until all of the funds are committed, and how that can be very problematic because you have urgent issues which actually have secured funding, but maybe the less urgent issues or just the bigger issues haven't, or the more expensive issues, I should say. And so it creates this delay. And so on the one hand, it's so great to have all this information at our fingertips, but it does generate some sense of urgency, okay, now we know, let's do.
Right.
And then, so is Parks gonna be doing anything internally to expedite where there are funds to be able to make the needed changes? Because I feel like giving people this information is gonna attract a lot of attention for, wanting to see these things done.
Sure.
And then to be met with delays from the same agency.
Sure.
Breed more frustration than then the enthusiasm isn't there.
So one point of clarification, the city's capital project process is set in conjunction with the city's law department and the Office of Management and Budget. The Parks Department doesn't set it. So OMB won't give us a certificate to proceed on a capital project until it's fully funded. So as much as we'd love to, hit the ground running and do what we can do, that's not the way city legislation and city regulations sets it up. I can send you the how we build parks process, but we can't get the okay to move ahead from OMB, Mayor's Office of Contracts, the controller, until everything, we know that the project's fully funded as scoped out.
That totally makes sense.
Yeah.
My sense is from my colleagues that we don't experience that same issue with schools, for example, and maybe it's how they scope the project.
Mhm.
So maybe there's a way to look at that differently instead of it being the entirety of everything that a park may require, but how can we, approach things as more individual requests when we think there might be. I mean, I can appreciate why a larger planning process is often helpful,
Right.
but if it creates these
Right.
and I'm just trying to think about, you're now gonna tell people these parks in your neighborhood that you should do something about and you should advocate for, but then if they feel that their hands are tied and the ability
Sure.
to do that, I can imagine
There's frustration. You'll be happy to know that we're part of an infrastructure task force. We're working on procurement, not revisions, but allowances. We're working with the state legislature to remove a lot of the bureaucratic requirements of procuring contractors to do this necessary work. And we've made considerable strides. We have worked on pre-qualified lists, gotten approval for them for MWBE firms, for smaller level contracts. So we are making headway in shaving off time in our procurement process, but it's been an interagency effort with not just parks. Because as I said, we don't set the city's procurement rules. And then we do have things like multi-site contracts and state of good repair contracts, which at times, we tend to bundle things in those because you get an economy of scale and the money goes further. But that can mean that your project, if it's just replacement in kind and needs repair, can be done more expeditiously. But we would love to be able to do things more quickly, but we also value, public input in all these checks and balances. But point well taken.
Jen, I'm sorry, can I jump in there really quick? That's Jess, right? Who's sharing that? Hey, Jess. So I just want to say everything Jen said was absolutely right, but I just a couple pieces here. I mean, one is, just in defense of our procurement process, which I know is long, but even at the last city council hearing, we had noted that we've actually been shaving down that time, which is good. Once we get into construction, I can't say anything for the other boroughs because I'm not in those meetings, but for Manhattan, we have like a 99% finish rate in terms of how the construction timeline or shorter. So, yes, it's bad, but there is like kind of numbers here that's demonstrating that it's getting better. One, two, I also just want to say that like where we can avoid a big capital project, just know, and it's like almost comical to see internally how much the borough team is thrilled to try to work individually to try to avoid those kind of large, some big capital projects are unavoidable, but where we can, to the Jen Hoppa's point about state of good repair, trying to do adopt a park, trying to find other ways to do these things faster, cheaper, but still with that same good high quality stuff that's going to last. Like that's definitely the name of the game here. I could think of a number of examples. Tompkins Park, I know we can talk about the new basketball courts that were resurfaced over there. Thank God, through linking Tompkins with a private donor. The private donor came in, said we really want to do this. We knew Tompkins needed it. We were able to put it in there, doing like trying to bring in our own in-house plumbers and welders and masonry folks to fix cobblestones, trying to fix some other water fountain issues, like where we don't have to replace it. Or I'm just getting emails about synthetic turf replacements where we can avoid a big capital project, synthetic turf replacement, all of those types of things. Like, just know that I hear you on like the delays and the long waits, and no, we don't want to get the community's hopes up just for them to say, okay, great, now wait 5 years for your park to be done. That's not the case. Sometimes, given the situation, particularly in CB4, where maybe something is close to the waterfront and all of a sudden it triggers all of these other things with flood mitigation, or it's a big project, or it's underneath DEP pipes or whatever it is, all of those things could obviously make it more complicated, but absolutely hear your point around delays and not wanting people to wait 5 years for their new park. In 5 years, my kids won't even be using the same play equipment that they're using now. So we totally get it. And like where we can, we are trying to shave down that time and working on an individual level to try to really address those concerns and bring people some real benefits as soon as possible.
Great, thank you. And I just have one quick thing. I know other hands are up, I'll just say it. And it's different than what you presented on here today, but I know in our waterfront parks meeting recently, there was a request of parks to try to make public when a request for trees is made and then where it is in the process. Because, some trees similarly will have been approved, but then we don't know, and it takes, again, some time, and that people made multiple requests, but don't really know what is happening.
Is it in the next bundle?
Exactly.
When's the,
So just you're dealing with all this data, again, it's it's slightly different, but it could, I can imagine it's a similar issue, kind of like transparency around the data that you have already, and I'm sure you're collecting.
where it is in the queue.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I will tell you,
I'm not sure if it shows that level of detail, but, and I think it shows up in the capital projects tracker, but you'd probably want a higher level of detail, so.
Yeah, that was the request.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. I see Beverly has her hand up, and then Xavier.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, this is a wonderful tool, and we will find many, many ways for using it, and greatly appreciate the work that's gone into it. I guess I'm a little, one area I understand how this can forward the planning on capital projects and other events of that kind. I'm a little concerned about the fact that it may be difficult to understand on the expense budget side where looming cuts and other concerns really impact the parks, and therefore would make it somewhat difficult for us as community boards to advocate on your behalf. I was recently read the piece in Cranes this week around the cuts to urban forest management, for example. So whatever is being shown as conditions around those matters in the tool will not reflect the fact that going forward, that level of service cannot be maintained. So is there some way of linking the data that you have here to sort of the expense budget variations that occur, certainly in this department as more regularly than in many others, where every year you're sort of fighting to stay level.
Right.
And just would appreciate understanding, is there some way we can make those connections and understand where we can be helpful in advocacy?
Thank you, Beverly. So in terms of expense dollars showing up, I think it's gonna show up in your park condition score. If you have a low park condition score, if your park isn't performing well, if it's not being cleaned as frequently as, is desirable, and so it's not passing inspections, if structurally it's deteriorating, if there are some landscape challenges, that's gonna reduce your score. And so that's one barometer for seeing, is there more expense funding needed, or is there more state of good repair sort of funding needed for upgrading that park? In terms of other budget cuts, and you know, how it's gonna explicitly affect your community, I think we won't have that level of detail in this tool. But, you know, yes, there are things like the tree map, there are things like New Yorkers for Parks that show where, you know, budget cuts have taken effect.
And I think, Trisha, did you want to jump in on that?
No, yeah, I Beverly, it's a good question. And it's interesting. I just qualitatively will say that I feel pretty, I would be happy to meet with you and CD7 individually or any other community board to go over a little bit more in detail about the expense budget. Expense can go into so many different pots for us. And like immediately when you were saying that, I was thinking about how, you know, like expense also covers like our movie nights and our family fun day things. And Councilmember Brewer has been really, actually all of the council members in Manhattan have been really good with some of that stuff. Sometimes they go into again buying like more planting material or buying a ping pong table for another park space or things like that. So it goes into a couple different buckets. It's a good note, and we can certainly follow up and talk about it more, but also happy to try to maybe incorporate some of those conversations into our regular engagements with the community boards so that you guys can keep better informed over kind of what expense money is coming in. But we've been feeling pretty good, and I'd say at least from like and not that I speak for all of rec, but like our rec team in Manhattan has been great with getting a lot of great funding. We've been good with getting a lot of kind of support from our council members. I kind of feel like across the board, there's not been that much of a huge difference there, but we can try to be better too about communicating that with every board individually.
And
Great.
Beverly, you can see that like at the park level. On the My Parks vital signs, you can see like the level, not just the park condition score, and its level of care and if that's deteriorated, but the types of or the number of events and programs that park is hosting.
Great. Thank you. I think finally we'll pass it over to Xavier.
Hi,
Hey, everyone. Thank you. Was traveling in a vehicle, so you may have covered this, but does this include community gardens as well?
It does. One of the value pillars is green and resilient, and one of the elements that falls under that is community gardens and whether New Yorkers in a particular community have access to them. So you can look at that at a community board level, or you can drill down into the block level with the Explorer tool.
All right, that'd be fantastic. I mean, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Marcus Garvey Park and a lot of the challenges we're facing there. I mean, it took a year just to get a light bulb changed. We're also dealing with a lot of needle refuse and public safety issues there. So again, falling into certain expense categories. This will be a very helpful tool that I'll pass along.
Great.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Trisha. Thank you, JC, for being here. Really appreciate the presentation.
And
yeah,
a big fail on my part. There's an opportunity on this as you're using the tool to share your feedback. We don't just want to put this information out there. We want you to submit questions, concerns, ideas. On the tool, there's a big share your feedback. And then in the individual park pages, My Parks Vital Signs, you can share your feedback. So it's also an opportunity for us to hear directly from more New Yorkers.
I have two kind of related questions. I was just curious if there's any kind of like 311 data kind of widget here that we could use. I'm just like curious about, you know, we have a lot of quality of life concerns.
We use
certain everywhere else too.
So in tandem with this, we're doing a 311 pilot. We do use 311 data. Obviously, we have to respond to all the 311 complaints, concerns, and praises. So in the chief operating officer's office, we have somebody who reviews all the 311 complaints, categorizes them, identifies or what percentage goes to litter, what percentage goes to enforcement, what percentage is about trees. And maybe not surprising to this group, most of them are about trees and tree conditions, but it's a helpful it's helpful information for us to how to deploy our resources where the challenges are, those that we can fix in the near term, and maybe those that we have to come up with more sort of a systematic approach to address.
And then the other sort of related question I had was about, I guess it would be, what is it? Something, I'm curious about the, like friends of groups, obviously, you know, and happens in CD3, we see a degree of inequity sometimes with friends of groups. So I'm just curious if there's kind of like mapping or.
There is,
Yeah.
we feel friends groups are critical, whether it's a community garden partner group or a grassroots group. We've mapped those as part of Vital Parks for All. It's one of the 21 elements under the engaged and empowered value pillar. We're looking to see where do communities benefit from partner groups, right? Because that helps us. You've got champions on the ground reporting to parks. Here's what we have, or here's what we need. We have partnerships for parks to provide technical assistance for those groups. We have the New York City Green Fund. It's part of one of the strategic initiatives where we're connecting those community groups to grants so they can put on their event, or maybe do some type of small scale site improvement with parks. We absolutely value them and we want to amplify their work. And then to complement that, we're identifying where are there gaps in sort of the network of partner groups. Where do we maybe need to have a catalyst coordinator go in and help maybe existing civic groups or tenants associations build like a friends of group so that they can champion their park, they can work to improve it. It can become sort of a community center, a place for social connection. So we have absolutely prioritized that. And if there are areas that you feel, you know, particular parks that would benefit, we'd love to have that further conversations with you about that. Because they'd be good candidates for the Catalyst program.
And Eddie from Councilmember Rivera's office, thank you so much for this. This is showing the momentum is going in the right direction. I'd love to build on Andrea's question. Using 311 data and police reports, we talk about 311 as it relates to kind of infrastructure, but we have a lot of parks in our district. Tompkins Square Park, we're working very closely with CB3 and other partners, parks, sanitation, et cetera. When it comes to mental health needs and other kind of social issues, are you thinking about using this data and then engaging in nonprofit partnerships to make sure that we're taking care of the full scope of needs?
We do work with social service providers already. In parks, Community Board 12, I used to run the parks in Northern Manhattan. We work with On Point, social service provider for people who use drugs. Department of Homeless Services, Homeless Outreach, NYPD, Parks Enforcement, and social service providers will go in and do outreach, provide support, connect people to services, encourage them maybe to use the overdose prevention center for drug use instead of in the park. And then we're piloting with some foundations in maybe our high drug use parks to go in and do some targeted programming, outreach in advance of programming that brings in positive uses in the park, but removes maybe the public drug use and connects those people to services. So we're absolutely collaborating. If there are other groups that you think we can work with, we're happy to do that. As parks are in many ways sort of the front lines for the mental health and social health conditions.
And I think Trisha wanted to jump in on this too.
Yeah, and I know that Eric's kind of keeping everybody on track and there's a lot more of agenda to go through, but I have Marcus Garvey and then Tompkins, so I can't help myself. So absolutely everything that Jen said. I mean, Xavier, we could have a whole other 2-hour-long conversation about Marcus Garvey, about the millions of dollars that we have planned for this space, about the kind of regular visits that we're making over there. improvements that we're making slowly but surely with Tompkins. Eddie, I think you know this, but CB3, if CB3 wasn't running them, then we would be running them because we run them for Sarah D, we run them for Seward, but CB3 is our lead anchor for holding regular meetings with all the social service providers and the PD and parks, talking about the ongoings there at Tompkins. At Tompkins at this point, I have activations every single weekend. Every single weekend we're there. During the weeks that we're there, it's still having problems. Obviously, we know this, but it's a work in progress, and all of that is data driven as well. It's not just qualitative stuff, but we also go off of the 311 data. We also go off of the reports that are coming in. So it's ongoing, but these things the coordination here does not happen just through Vital Parks. It will be a good tool for us to use, but this kind of coordination is week by week, day by day. Tompkins, Seward, Sarah D, Marcus Garvey, Highbridge. These are like some of these parks are just like at the top of my list that we talk about daily.
Right.
Daily.
Thanks, Trisha. Xavier, I'll pass it over to you, but I know some folks have some hard outs, so I think this may be the last question that we have. Xavier?
Yeah, thank you. I'll make it brief, and thank you, Trish, for acknowledging the challenges at Marcus Garvey. And I just want to, for the record, let everyone know that since the end of 2021, we have seen an uptick in drug use in the park, and that's related to Senate Bill 2523 that was passed. And actually, we've seen an uptick in overdoses in our district. And despite the partnership with On Point, we've seen an influx of new dealership coming in and actually quintuple fold. So it is a challenge that has impacted Community District 11 more than most. So we appreciate that partnership with parks and the best way we can solve these problems and actually heal our community. But yeah, I've been on the receiving end, having hit the streets and gone door to door, hearing complaints about that. So we appreciate the acknowledgement and investment in the community in that regard. Thank you.
Thanks, Xavier. And thank you guys again for being here. Really appreciate it.
Yes, thanks for having us. And use the tools and let us know what you
Thank you
think.
very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Before we go into reports, we have a brief presentation from DCP, who wanted to flag their new district needs statement platform. So I will pass it over to them. Nicholas?
Hey, thank you. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yeah.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thanks so much for having us. I will keep it quite brief. It's a pretty quick slideshow. So let me know. Are you guys seeing that
Yes.
slide? All right, perfect. So hey, my name is Nick Sampar. I am on the planning support team here at City Planning, and I am the lead for our community district needs process. Quick special thank you to our colleagues at Parks for the unexpected praise to the community district needs statements. We also love them and think that they're very valuable, and I'm happy to hear that other folks are sometimes maybe unbeknownst to them praising them in front of us. So that was a great great surprise.
I didn't know you were on, Nicholas, I swear.
I love to hear it. All right,
No,
so
the presentation.
as some of you might know, we are rolling out a new submission platform for the community district needs statement and community board budget requests this year for boards to use to complete their submissions. So I've just got a quick overview of some of the highlight sort of info about that. So we had a previous site that had garnered over the years that it was in place quite a bit of frustration from boards, and very understandably so. The user experience was not only touchy, but kind of deteriorating over time. There were issues with the layout being confusing, folks getting timed out in the middle of their work, other sort of glitches and technological oddities. And it was very difficult for us to actually make changes and improvements year over year. And so we've opted to move to a new program that we feel is substantially more straightforward for users to work in and complete. But also, one of the things we're most excited about is that it is adaptable. It is something that we're going to be able to take ongoing feedback and continue to build and improve upon year over year to make sure that the user experience is as low of a barrier as possible for folks trying to get through their district needs statements and whatnot. Special shout out to district managers and other board staff who have contributed in the creation of this platform. We had a lot of great interaction and feedback from boards across the city, particularly in Manhattan. as we hosted a number of hours of feedback gathering sessions in the winter, and then weekly trainings on the new platform for several months through the spring and into the summer, and actually had quite a number of suggestions from district managers and other community board staff go directly into some of the new features of the form that we're very excited about. Some things will remain the same for any of you who may be involved in the creation and finalization of your district needs statements. All of the sections and content side of things will all remain the same. That'll all still be very familiar. Your top 3 pressing issues, your narratives for all the different policy areas, those have all remain the same. We have mostly made our changes in the user experience side of things. I've highlighted a couple things here. Some of the major pluses as far as we're concerned, and from what we've heard early reports back from users, you can create any of your new budget requests all on the same page. So you no longer need to navigate between 7+ sections of a website when you're creating new budget requests. We also made it a lot easier you can minimize. This was a suggestion from Angel Mescain, actually, who asked if we could have budget requests minimizable so that you could reorder them without having to, an easier visualization when you're solving your budget request priorities every year. And so we implemented that upon his recommendation. So a lot of new sort of quirks and fixes like that to make it an easier process for the folks that are, sitting down at the computer to complete their district needs statement every year. Some important notes to remember. Every board is receiving a unique link to access their form. It's no longer a single website that everyone goes to. Your boards have received their own unique links to their submission form. We will be sending out those again for boards that, returning from recess, and always helpful to get another reminder, another touch point. So you'll receive more contact from us to that end. You'll get your own link. So sharing links does not work. Your link is for your board, and everyone else's links are for everyone else's boards. Form performance, we've heard from early reports back, can differ across web browsers and computers. So, just in personal experience, my personal computer at home tends to run the form better than my work computer in the office. So it is worth, if you've got multiple browsers on your computer or an extra computer available, it might be worth testing it out to see if it's maybe a little quicker, a little more responsive on one versus the other. And then highly recommend when you are making new budget requests, as opposed to prioritizing the existing ones, open the new budget request form in a new tab in your browser. It'll make it that much easier for you to kind of bounce back and forth between your existing requests and the form that lets you create new ones. So those are just a couple, and I can make sure that you guys all get these slides so that you have these on hand as well. Just some important notes that we've picked up on from our ongoing conversation and trainings that we're still holding with boards and their staff ongoing. Lastly, just want to plug a reminder that in addition to the new form, we have a lot of other support activities that we offer for boards during their season of preparing their district needs statement. We are running an online survey that anyone in the city can click a single link to take this survey to tell their community board what they think their district's biggest needs are. We will be we do the response interpretation for those surveys. So if your board is receiving responses from the public on that survey, I will send you reports with the data that we're getting from that survey, so you can kind of take a look at what folks in your district are saying about their top needs. DCP has a lot of online data resources that can also be useful, and our team is available to help with all sorts of different trainings, tech support needs, anything related to CD needs. We are more than happy to support. We've also recently developed a number of print materials, both templates for flyers as well as templates for social media posts that if you wanted to sort of skip the step of designing those on your own, we've got some templated options available for boards to use as well if you're looking to sort of spread the word about a district needs related public hearing or any other form of communication with your constituents. So that's all I've got for today. Happy to answer any questions with what time we may or may not have left, but thank you all for your attention, and feel free to reach out after the meeting as well. We're always here and ready to chat CD needs with anybody who's interested.
Thanks, Nicholas. Before we get into questions, I just wanted to flag, thank you for being here. Sorry for the hiccup getting you on a little.
Oh, no worries.
I also did want to note, as Nicholas has pointed out, I've also been in contact with district managers and board staff. A lot of them are very well versed in this new platform and the new changes. As you mentioned, a lot of them have given feedback and have been part of like the creation of this, so they're pretty well versed in it. So we still wanted to make sure that you got a presentation on it as well, though. So I think, and you mentioned that you'll send this slide deck out, so
Yeah,
I'll make sure that's everyone too. Valerie, you had a question?
Thank you, Nick. I just had a question. You mentioned that there would be a way for the public to sort of independently give input. How are you advertising that? And then how would you be forwarding that to a particular community board?
So we did not want the sort of public input gathering to necessarily be, DCP's project. That is, we want the boards to sort of be, take ownership of their engagement with their own constituents. And so this started as a year or two ago, we were running individual surveys for boards that opted into wanting us to help them run a survey. We now, thanks to the actually the same software that we're using to make that we use to make the new submission platform, we're now able to just house it in one survey where the first question is essentially what district are you in, and then we're able to on the back end slice up the responses by what district the person is identifying with. And so what we do is anyone who's interested, and we've been sort of telling as many boards as we can get the word out to that this is available to them. We've got a link and a QR code that boards can feel free to share, put on their website, put in a newsletter, put in, on a flyer, on a social media post, however you all already do your outreach, to let your constituents know they can contribute. And then we sit down once a week and check on the numbers for which boards have received a bunch of new responses this week, and for those that have seen a particular uptick that week, I can download a sort of pre-made report with charts and graphs of all the responses and send that off to you via email. And so it's not you won't get a new report every week, because if you only get 3 new responses in a week, the data probably has not changed all that significantly. But if you've received any responses, we will make sure that you get those reports sent periodically to let you know kind of what the public has been saying for those that have responded to the survey.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Anyone else have any questions? All right, thank you, Nicholas. Really appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks, y'all.
With that, we will move into chair reports. It's August 8th month, so we'll pass it to CBA to start.
Oh, okay. Well, happy August, everybody. I'm finally happy to report that we finished up our City of Yes housing opportunity work, and we were able to get consensus on not all approvals and not all disapprovals, but we were able to go through it. Took us 3 chances, but we finally did it. So I'm very happy to report that. In addition, as I mentioned to some of you, we have some ULURPs coming up. We think Northwell Lenox Hill Hospital has just filed with DCP, and they will be coming to us in the fall. And as I mentioned to some of you, when we have those hearings, I will let you know when they are, because I think it will be of interest to everyone in the borough of Manhattan as to how this project unfolds. And we would be interested in hearing input from everyone who lives in Manhattan, not only the people who live in our district. In addition to that, we've had some we had one new member resign, which is unfortunate. So we're going to have to do a replacement. Eric mentioned some of that. And that's really it. We had our Street Life meeting in August, and it was jam-packed with shed meetings. People are not really understanding what is happening with the roadway sheds. That's for sure. Everyone's confused, I think, as to whether they have to come. If you haven't filed a permit or a request for a permit, whether going forward, your shed can stay up until November, or did it already have to come down? And so everybody's a little bit confused by that. We also had some legal cannabis stores open that we think have not opened appropriately, and so we're working on that too. Thank you.
Thanks. CB 9 and 10 aren't here. I don't know if Xavier is still online. If so, Xavier, if you want to give a report, otherwise we could come back to you. Might be away. Catherine had to leave, so we will pass it to CB2. Speed version today.
Our good piece of news was that the site at 388 Hudson, a former DCP tunnel site, which is going to have on its northern portion affordable housing, will now also feature a brand new recreation center, which the community has been in desperate need of for a long time, and which the board has been advocating for quite some time, because our local center, Tony D'Apolito, which of course has been closed for years, it was a pleasant surprise that there was a sort of turnaround, and that HPD, which had been sort of lukewarm on the idea, has now embraced it and is now actively working with parks on that. The unfortunate news is that they are now claiming that D'Apolito is unsalvageable, and there is discussions of whether or not to demolish it, which has raised some serious concerns for our community, because it is located within a historic district, which was the lines of which were specifically drawn to include this. And right now, we do not have information to make informed decisions on this. The mere fact of the age of something not being a determining factor, and there's a lot to learn before steps are taken. Without having any resources within the community in terms of a recreation center, this is at least something positive. Also, at that site, we do have an outdoor pool, which people are very much interested in preserving. And in listening to the parks presentation, you realize how important these are. That pool too has been unavailable throughout this summer and last summer. And we're hoping that no matter what happens at the D'Apolito site, that certainly that park should be preserved, and the Keith Haring mural that sits alongside of it is preserved. We've also, as had been mentioned, with continuing sort of on a parks theme, is we've been seeing huge upticks in the drug use in Washington Square Park and around the park. And while it is very, good to hear about engagement on these issues, not just in terms of enforcement, but in terms of social services, one thing that we've been getting feedback on is the idea that services of this nature in the park is often causing those users and dealers to move into the streets around the park. And at the same time, we're also hearing that enforcement in Union Square Park, which is a logical thing, is again driving other users and dealers down, so that we're having this concentration that is now developing in that area between the two parks. And this is much more, people are finding people shooting up on their doorsteps and are unable to access their homes. So this is an ongoing thing that we're don't know if there's a solution, or if it's just a question of finding new ways to cope with it. And we did have a presentation by the DA's Office of Special Narcotics on this. So strategies of ways to deal with this. Just one more thing, outdoor dining is still is slow coming in, and we had no applications last month, 2 sidewalk and 1 roadway this month, but we keep hearing that there are many in the pipeline, and hopefully they will be flowing to us so that we can process them, and move that project forward and get rid of those old sheds. And I will just leave it at that.
Thank you for that. Pass it to CB3.
Great.
I guess I'll segue about the sheds. CB3 is a rat mitigation zone on the top floors, I think, in the city. So our office has been coordinating with Hospitality Alliance and local businesses to get ahead of the sheds coming down and try and do some mitigation work. I'm not sure what the results of that are yet, but it's in the works right now. We also passed a little bit late, but we did it at the end of last month, land use and political resolution, City of Yes. Some of the details escape me right now, but we passed it with a number of recommendations. We also finally filled positions for our new ADM and community associate. We have thank you. Yeah, we have to go through some archives of some processes of we haven't hired a community associate in years or more. So yeah. So things are kind of re-operationalizing in our office, which is a welcome change. We also joined CB1 on the announcement of a plus pool, I think last week. We're really excited to learn that it will be just outside of Pier 35, so the border of CB2. And then we also, another piece of exciting news we got just a few weeks ago was something that aligns with our long priorities for deeply affordable transitional and supportive housing. A local group, Cooper Square, and a number of partners are purchased a site from an archdiocese, and we're going to be building 500 units of affordable housing in the neighborhood. So we're really excited about that. I'm sure there's more about those, just kind of top level. So, yeah.
Great, thank you. I'll pass it to CB4.
No, thank you. I'll pick up where you just left off, which we've had a number of groundbreakings for affordable housing in our district recently, and we're really pleased that the governor announced we worked really closely with BSD on a proposal for the former women's prison, Bayview, which is on 20th and basically the West Side Highway, and the state released an RFP with a lot of consultation from the board and ultimately selected a vendor, a provider, developer who will be really restoring the building, its historically preserved site in consultation with SHPO, and bringing both affordable as well as supported housing to, I think it's 17 or 14 people in need of transitional services who are experiencing a mental health crisis. So really exciting. It's a really interesting project, being a former women's prison, being in, it's like, you know, a highly affluent neighborhood at this point with a lot of redevelopment across from the park on a highway. Lots of things happening right there. It's just a really interesting site. We're excited to see that go forward. City of Yes was a real bear for us, as it sounds like for others. We spent a lot of time. We did deny a bless, which was very difficult for our board, as just evidenced by my former comment. You know, we really have been a board that's really tried to lead on housing issues, and so it was really very difficult to come out for a deny unless, but we do feel like conditions really should be, you know, if considered, could make for a stronger proposal for City of Yes and something that can work for, you know, more districts within the city, as opposed to how it's currently written. We also had a ULURP for the Port Authority bus terminal, which we did approve with conditions. We've worked really closely with the port on this project. It is going to be massive. The comment earlier about traffic, like, this is going to have such significant implications for the entire city while it's happening, but long term it's an important infrastructure investment. We are still concerned about the mitigation efforts that need to be secured to make this project work, and we'll continue to work with the port, something that's been, I would say, a very significant focus over time.
Thank you for that. Brett?
All right. So I've been trying to get myself up to speed over the past few months and keep things moving along. So I'll start with City of Yes as well. So we did pass it with conditions. It was also a bear for us. It was a long 6-hour meeting where we did it, but by the end we got to actually near unanimity, which I was surprised to hear. But was yes with a number of conditions to try to move that along, picking up on some of the things other colleagues have said. The outdoor dining process, we have not gotten quite the glut we expected or has been promised, but we are starting to process some of those. I think we've gotten somewhere in the half dozen to a dozen range that we're moving through. I will say that the timing that is allowed for the comment period is proving very challenging for us, especially to give opportunity for the full board or even at sometimes a committee to weigh in. So we have like a task force that's dedicated to it, and they are usually mostly operating sort of under the auspices or sort of a previous resolution that gives them sort of a rubric, but that's not the best way for this to go through. And so we are finding that very challenging and working with some of the elected officials because it sounds like they have maybe a slightly different timeline that they're able to operate under too as well. We are starting a process to take another look at our bylaws now. It's been a little while since we've done that. We have a task force sort of working, and they may be reaching out to members of you as well to hear sort of some of your best practices, some of the things that you like. So if you have any hot tips on ways the bylaws can be improved, I know we're looking particularly at voting, ways to streamline that, potentially some of the ways and timings of elections and that sort of thing. So I'll take any advice that you have. Speaking of major infrastructure projects, we are about to finish kind of the phase 1 of our Penn Station study, which is more kind of background and context on that, working with the MUD workshop on that, and they are sort of, so they'll be issuing that report, and then it'll be a process for us to figure out sort of what the next steps are on that very important project, which is in our district, but affects the entire city, sort of the front door. So and then finally, we have also unfortunately lost a few members, old and new, over the past over the break and sort of since appointment. So we are very much looking forward to getting some new members, particularly for some of these committees, like the one that focuses on our open restaurants, because they're starting to get a little thinner than we'd like for the work that we expect to come. So
Great, thank you. And I would point out, I know there's a number of boards who've done some great work on bylaws, but as you mentioned about voting, I think we tabled for a bit a conversation about streamlining voting because some boards do it differently than others, but I would certainly suggest talking to your counterpart at CB7. They have a format for just voting electronically that has probably cut down their meetings, Beverly, about 30 minutes or so?
Oh, at least.
So I'm sure that'll be welcome too. So we definitely ask you to connect with Beverly.
we'll be coming there then.
I think Xavier is back. Xavier, are you able to give your report?
Yeah, sorry about that. It's a manic morning. I'll be as brief as I can do. Appreciate everyone's understanding whilst traveling. I want to wish you a happy August. I hope everyone's well. Let me see if I can come on camera real quick. Hey everyone, wish I could be in the room. Look forward to seeing you in September. We just finished our parks tour, so it was very apt that Parks was here giving a presentation. Thank you so much. We literally went to all the community gardens, every park, highlighting the issues that we're dealing with, help educate and bring on our new members as well, which we did have our onboarding session with our new members in the district at 101st and Lex, which was the first Uptown Open Street program. I'm very pleased that went very well. We do, I think, have 1 or 2 empty slots, Eric, so we'd love to get on the phone with you and chat about that. A lot of people are very motivated. We are seeing many of our new members notice the changes in our neighborhood, which I alluded to with Marcus Garvey. Over the past 7-8 months, I've literally gone throughout the entire community, talking to people from Franklin Plaza with the 2nd Avenue subway, dealing with 1199 and the issues they're facing, which is one of our last Mitchell Lamas in affordable housing, and what they're seeing writ large with public safety issues. We have, and those, again, proud Gen Xer, so dating myself a little bit here, several people have said it's starting to look like the 80s again in our neighborhood. And East Harlem has often been called the canary in the coal mine. It's very, very important that we need as much solidarity from all of our sister boards as we advocate for the needed changes in Community District 11. Bylaws, I heard that brought up. I worked with the late, great Joe Goldblum, who, when we redrafted ours, so if there are any questions, feel free to reach out. I'll be a resource as much as possible. And yeah, so right now we're giving a lot of our board a recess as we will jump in feet first, doing our work when it comes to the Statement of District Needs and Budget. And we are shifting around a lot of our board leadership to make sure we have a more well-rounded, robust bench. So you'll be seeing a lot of changes on multiple committees and people taking on new roles. So unfortunately, we will lose Jessica Elliott from Environment, Open Space and Parks, who's also our vice chair of the board, and she will be moving over to Statement of District Needs and Budget. So that's just one example. And but I wanted to say thank you to everyone. I look forward to us picking up our chair get-togethers in the fall. So thank you and have a happy end of the summer.
Thanks, Xavier. Sandy?
Okay, we have two ULURP actions coming up. August 26th is the public hearing, and this is for the Spark site. And the other site is sort of kitty corner to it called Innovation East. No affordable housing. These were the two biggest city-owned sites in our district, and they decided to put in labs and other facilities. There's a high school, CUNY nursing school, but no housing. So quite upset about that. It's great to hear there's going to be affordable housing in other parts of the city, but nothing in ours. So that's we're pushing to see what we can have as part of the ULURP to look for other sites in our district, but we'll see what happens. MSBI is going to close, huge problem in our district. And we want to make sure that it doesn't turn into just a land grab. We'd like to have that property given back to the city, potentially a land trust action. So again, there's just really very few spaces where we can do affordable housing in our district, and it's you know, we do whatever we can. We also don't have any outdoor dining yet. And the FDR, we were wondering if it might be something that the borough board could do a resolution just to ask for just for support for reaching out for further funding, that it's something that we would be interested in investigating. Our board wrote a resolution that was really just please continue the study. And if we could have that kind of resolution from the board, that would be really helpful. There are several grants that we're trying to ask for, and as much community engagement as we can have would be great. If that's something we might be able to do at this time.
Yeah, I know that, I mean, we have some districts that aren't physically connected to it, so it may make it a little difficult, but I would love for boards to maybe take that back and have conversations on support, and then we can come back to see if there's the ability to pass some sort of resolution of support.
And we understand that it's very high level right now, that it's really, we need to study, but unfortunately we need funds to go ahead and do that study, and we don't want it to be just our district.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Beverly, I'll pass it to you.
Hello, our full board does not meet in July or August, so much has been going on at the level of committee, but no resolutions to report out on. For City of Yes, we sent a follow-up letter to our earlier resolution, giving more detail on some of our concerns around UAP. Dining out, we've approved the first 5 out of what we understand is a queue of 150 applications that affect our district. We have it organized so that our board voted to delegate to a joint committee of our transportation and business and consumer issues, and they have been meeting as needed and have gotten very organized. So the criteria on which they're deciding are getting clearer and clearer, basically through kind of case by case. The discussions with the developer are proceeding around the ABC site. This is one where Board 7, along with Landmarks West, had developed a ULURP application, which has not been certified, but which we know is available to be certified shortly, should we so choose. But we are also taking the tack of further discussions with the developer to see if there can be a mutually agreed on plan for the site. And city planning has been deeply involved in working that through, also has along with our city council member. At our request, DOT has modified their plan for the West 96th Street bus lane that they're developing. We had several deep concerns regarding, in one case, they were not going to permit left turns at Amsterdam that would have funneled traffic onto Broadway in a way that would create a dangerous situation. So we raised that, and they've agreed to make the changes. So I think that's it.
Great, thank you, Beverly. I think with that, I will take a motion to adjourn unless anyone has any other questions.
I wanted to make a suggestion for our next meeting.
Yeah,
At
absolutely.
our next meeting, I would like the board to consider passing a resolution asking the city council, the mayor, and the various agencies that there should be no public hearings during July and August going forward. The city planning commission hearing on City of Yes was ridiculous, quite frankly. It went on for 15 straight hours, and on a plan that is so transformational, that kind of hearing is just counterproductive and really makes people think that they don't want to be heard from. Because as the time went on, I mean, I listened to it all day long, on my phone. And, at the 14th, 15th hour, there should have been at least 25 to 30 more speakers, but people were dropping off because it was 1 o'clock in the morning. And I just don't think that should be permitted. And next week, DOT has 2 hearings planned on e-bikes and things of that nature. And I think it's outrageous, and I think we should say something about it going forward.
I made a note of that, so let me talk to folks and figure that out.
Okay, thank you.
I also see that Councilmember Brewer joined us, so I'd love to give Councilmember Brewer a chance to give a report.
Thank you. I'll be very quick because I know you want to adjourn. So I'll just list fast. We are done a graffiti survey on the west side of every graffiti, and we are up to 2,000, and we're going to bug the agencies to clean up, and we're going to help. Number 2, something very positive, which is that a woman had closed her business and wants to donate washers and dryers to schools, 14. So we found 14 schools who want washer dryers. We got Westside Movers on Tuesday, and they are going to pick them up and deliver them to 14 schools. So that's a wonderful thing. Women's Equality Day was Bella Abzug's idea, Congresswoman, and it is August 26th. So we are doing a huge day around the West Side. Everybody's willing to work with us on voter registration, nonpartisan. We are obviously focused on cannabis shops. I don't need to tell you, we're continue to close, but there are some challenges there. I am fighting the 5G towers. It's not easy. I am concerned about Central Park, as we all are, and the crime. It's full of articles in the Times today, and the cops are trying to help. We are very active in the District 3 with migrant families. We had a meeting yesterday. We're doing another one in September. It's a really good example of how you can work with migrant families, schools, and nonprofits to get the families what they need. And then we continue with fresh food for seniors. And all of the seniors are ecstatic to have that kind of support, meaning you get $10 you pay and you get $15 worth of fresh food and vegetables every 2 weeks. In terms of advocacy, we've had some hearings on the city marshals. There are a lot of issues there with family court judicial appointments. And obviously, we're all continuing to work on the e-bikes topic. In terms of summer hearings, I'm afraid there is one in the city council on August 27th regarding Randy Mastro and the issue for Corp Council. I think you know about it. And then on the 17th of September, something that you might be interested in, my committee oversight with finance is doing a cannabis enforcement law oversight committee. And then very quickly, we just continue to have, as I talked about, Women's Equality Day. It's a big deal. So let us know if you want to work with us. And then on the 14th of September, outside of our office at 87th Street, we're having the animal care mobile unit. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Councilmember. All right. With that, there's nothing else. I will take a motion to adjourn. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all for being here virtually and in person. See you in September.
Thanks, Eric.